What's up, everybody? It's your boy Mel here in our classic review. Today I'm reviewing the 1971 film The House That Dripped Blood, released in 1971 by Amicus Pictures, who are the actual rivals against Hammer with the horror genre. But before we begin, did you subscribe? Did you hit the bell? So you better not buy this house unless you really want to know the story behind this mysterious house. Shall we? Let's go. So yeah, this movie has a major cast, including the stars like Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Nairi Dawn Porter, Delholm Elliott, and John Petrie. You'll remember him as the third Doctor in Doctor Who. And this was a horror anthology film made in Britain, which, damn, they made a lot, including Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Beyond the Grave, and other famous anthology films, including Dr. Terror's, Horror Garden. But yeah, let's begin, shall we? So yeah, we start with the opening plot where we meet Detective Inspector Holloway, played by John Bennett, who is from Scotland Yard. It's called to investigate the inquiry of the local police about the disappearance of a famous actor, played by John Petrie. That's when the Holloway is told about the house's history. So we meet the first story, Method of Murder, where we meet Charles Hiller, played by Delholm Elliott, who played Marcus Brody in Indiana Jones, I think. The more kindly-hearted proprietor of the museums the artifacts Indy brings. So yeah. Soon, along with his wife, Alice, they moved to the house. Charles began working on a novel focusing on Dominic, a murderous psychopathic strangler. Charles becomes shamelessly annoyed and disturbed by the character. Soon, he starts to see Dominic, played by Tom Adams, who begins stalking and tormenting him. Sooner or later, he starts to see a psychologist named Dr. Andrews, played by Robert Lang. Of course, saying that Dominic is a split personality formed by him getting Dominic's mindset to write the novel. Of course, things is getting weirder and weirder. He sees Dominic strangling Alice, only for her to claim that Charles was the one trying to strangle her. So he sees the psychiatrist again, and things get a little worse. Until we found out it's actually Richard, who is Alice's lover. Trying to... oh shit. Trying to make Charles go insane. Like, literally insane. But this is when things go from crazy and weird. Because... sorry, I just have a headache. I was saying, trying to get insane, so Alice and Richard could take the money that he made from his work, from the novels, and run off together. But soon, Alice gets a call from the police, learns about Dr. Andrews, and Charles had been strangled to death. Alice asks Richard why he had killed him, and as it was not part of the plan, only for Richard to reveal he now believes he's Dominic. Richard Dominic then strangles Alice while laughing insanely. Of course, we go back to with Detective Holloway. He informs that Richard Dominic was later found over Alice's body, laughing insanely. Believe it merely a case of Richard Dominic being driven to madness by the role. But soon he dismisses the absurd, and then the Martin, who's the one selling the place, tells him another story of another tenant about the house. And this story is called Waxworks. We meet retired stockbroker. What was his name? Sorry. Philip Grayson, played by Peter Cushing, moves into the house. Initially, he occupies himself with hobbies and quickly alone. One day, walking around the town, why, who doesn't when you're bored? He sees a wax museum. He explores and sees a statue, a sculpture of Solomon, which resembles a woman that who was in love with. He meets the proprietor, played by Wolf Morris, where he explains based on his late wife, who was executed after murdering his best friend. Disturbed, Grayson Neville's never returned. His friend Neville Rogers, played by Joss Ackland, arrives at his home while traveling on business. Grayson eagerly invites him to stay for the night, which it became clear the two had both been romantic rivals for the same woman. However, the two have reconciled after her death. The next day, Grayson takes Neville around town, and the two spot the wax museum. Though Grayson tries to persuade him not to go in, Neville wants to see, which, of course, he tries to persuade him, but, of course, Neville enters the wax museum and sees the sculpture. Oh boy. Yeah. Ain't that a hot potato? And things get pretty weird, if you ask me. Wait, was I here before? I don't know. I think I'm lost. Oh no, let's go back. I think I'm lost. But yeah. Of course, that's when, after seeing something become obsessed with it, Neville tries to leave town, but unable to abandon the sculptures, staying in a local motel. He calls Grayson and informs him of his predicament. Where Grayson arrives, he finds Neville has left for the wax museum. Grayson goes to the museum, finds Neville while looking for him. Guess what he finds? The statue of the woman again, this time with Neville's head on a plate. Yeah. That's when the proprietor shows up and reveals why his wife was executed. And it turns out he framed his wife for his friend's murder so that he could cover her corpse in wax and keep her to himself. But however, due to her beauty, men continue to be enamored with her. Like Neville, became obsessed with her, which of course drove him insane. Like, literally insane. Soon he starts grabbing an axe and starts to swing at Grayson until we see another customer walking by, pulls the string, sees Solomon, the proprietor shows up and say, yes, she's so beautiful. And guess who has there this time? Grayson's. Yeah. Back with Detective Holloway, asks about if Henderson moved in next. Which, of course, we got another one called Sweet to the Sweet. Where we meet widower John Reed, played by Christopher Lee, moves to the house along with his pyrophobic young daughter, Jane. John hires a former teacher, Anne Norton, to be a nanny, or Zach, or tutor Jane, and graduate bonds with Jane, and she helps Jane get over her fear and teaches her how to read. But begins to suspect John is abusive because he does not allow her to play with other children or own toys. Does his best to keep her isolated. Strange, isn't it? But let's keep going, shall we? Norton confronts John All is about preparing his parenting, asks if he blames Jane for the death of his wife, which John responds that he's glad his wife is dead. Norm manages to get John to allow her to buy Jane some toys, which John discovers a doll amongst the toys, but he snatches it from Jane and tosses it into the fire. Begins to secretly read up books about witchcraft. One night, during a blackout, John discovers some of the candles are missing. John angrily questions Jane about this and slaps her. To Anne's horror, Jane secretly uses the missing candles to form a wax voodoo doll, which she used to leave John bedridden. Oh boy. Back to all the same. Oh boy. He revealed that to Anne that Jane's mother was a witch, and that Jane is that as well. The reason for his parenting method were to stop Jane from harming anybody. When Jane begins to attack John with the voodoo doll again, he instructs Anne to find the doll, take it from Jane, and stop her from killing him. Which, of course, you can see Jane peeking, watching the whole thing. Soon, Anne finds Jane standing next to a fireplace, holding the doll, and tries to convince her to give her the doll, but what does Jane do? She throws the doll in the fireplace. To Anne's horror, listens to John burn to death, and Jane smiles evilly. I wonder what happened to her mother. I think it has something to do with that. Of course, Detective Holloway dismisses that story as the most ridiculous so far, and demands the realtor tell him about Henderson. Stoker clarifies that they warned Henderson not to take it, but of course, right for his personality, but states, This is a long one, I tell you what. Anthology films. Is it a headache or what? But yeah. Soon he tells him what happened to Henderson. So he tells him the final story. The Cloak. Then we meet the Timber veteran horror film actor Paul Henderson, played by John Petrie. Like I said before, he was the third Doctor in Doctor Who and other films, which I try to remember which. Moves in a house while starring in a vampire film being shot nearby. Henderson, a great fan of horror genre, is angry over the lack of realism in the film, particularly over the cloak his character wears, who happens to be a vampire. He decides to purchase a more accurate cloak, and to the end stop at an antique shop run by an enigmatic Theo von Hartmann, played by Jeffrey Beldon. Von Hartmann offers him a black cloak. After listening Henderson's demands, Henderson purchases it. Before he leaves, von Hartmann tells him to use the cloak for its intended purpose. Everybody cloak from somewhere different, boys and girls. You might regret it. Well, in the makeup room, Henry finds that when he wears the cloak, he has no reflection. Later that day, while shooting the scene where he has to suck blood from his co-star and girlfriend Carla, played by Ingrid Pitt, that's when he tried to actually suck her blood. Even after the scene ends, horrified, Carla demands that he stay away from her. At midnight, during the witching hour, he puts the cloak on again as a test. He grows fangs, begins to fly, much to his horror. While reading his paper, it turns out that von Hartmann's shop has burnt down and von Hartmann's corpse has been found inside. The corpse was identified as being several years old. Paul realized that von Hartmann was a vampire and that he gave Henderson the cloak that he could pass his powers to Henderson. Wow. What killed him? That is just creepy. I tell you what. Oh boy. Of course. Things got a lot weirder. That's why Henderson apologizes to Carla, invites her over to his house. He explains her to his predicament. She is skeptical and demands him to prove it by putting on the cloak. Henderson is reluctant as it is midnight, but he ultimately complies. Paul is relieved to find that nothing happened, but he quickly realizes the cloak has been swapped out for a prop. Carla dons the cloak, reveals she's actually a vampire sent to Henderson into another vampire. As most vampires admire his portrayal of their kind, Carla flies towards him, screaming, and begins to turn into a vampire. Wow. You buy a cloak from a vampire, and turns out your girlfriend's actually a vampire who's a major fan of your films betraying a vampire. Ain't that weird? Of course, after Holly hears that, he thinks it's bullshit. He goes to the house himself despite being almost midnight. With no electricity, he explores the house by candlelight, eventually breaking into a long basement where he finds and kills Henderson, who was a fully transformed vampire. He's himself until, guess what happened? He runs to Carla, who's a vampire. She flies right at him and gets killed. Next morning, Stoker... What broke? Whoops. Next morning, Stoker walks up to the house, breaks the fourth wall, talking to the audience, asking if they understand the secret of this house. That reflects the personality of whoever is living in it and treats them accordingly. He muses that perhaps the audience would be suitable and that there's nothing to fear provided they're the right sort of person. And that was The House That Dripped Blood, released in 1971. This is a weird movie. Like all anthology films, it focuses on one character, the house. Three tales about the house. A man. Split personality of a character he wrote. The second one. A retired employee haunted by the face of a former lover. The last one, an actor who buys a cursed cape that turns him into a vampire. And the detective trying to debunk it until he ends up getting killed by the female vampire. Wow. Ain't this bullshit. But yeah, this was a good movie. This is from 1971, released by Amicus Pictures at the time. Excuse me. Let me see what's released. Wow, that's a nice budget. I was checking the budget here. It was only like $500,000 for the budget. So wow, with all the effects here, they know how to handle the budget better than the U.S. Because since the U.S. go for millions for their budget, this is like $500,000. They know how to handle budgets, don't they? And it was released in 21st of February of 1901 in the UK, while it had a US release in 2nd of April of the same year. Wow. That's a big project right there. It's kind of weird, though. Yep. Collection of 4 stories concerning the same building. Which... each of the stories, like I said, are based in an issue of a comic book. Like, okay, take on Method of Murder. It was based on Fury issue 7 that was published in 1962. Then you have Waxworks by Weird Tales, Volume 33, Issue 1, from January of 1939. I gotta check these out. And of course, you got another one, Sweet to Sweet, by Weird Tales, Volume 39, Issue 10, March of 1947. The Cloak, which is unknown, by May of 1939. And yeah, most are based on comic books from some from the 60s, some from the 30s and 40s. But yeah, let me know what you think of the movie and if you ever seen the movie, because the movie's on YouTube right now, of including the other films by Amicus Pictures, including Beyond the Grave, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror. Go check it out, including The House That Dripped Blood. And make sure it's good quality, because they usually do bullshit editing. I know it's for copyright, but it's better to hear the original than some stupid edits. It's a pain in the ass, I tell you what. But yeah, let me know what you think of The House That Dripped Blood, because I feel like the movie, because I remember I seen this movie like last year, and I had to do a lot of my homework to do my research here. It's not easy while you're reading your script while playing this game, so that's why you notice me stopping while reading. Hey, you ain't give me credit. I'm multitasking here. This is a anthology horror film, so unlike other films, this one's like a different stories in one film. But yeah, let me know what you think of The House That Dripped Blood. Did you like it? And if you've seen the movie, I'm not talking about you actually seen it in the 70s. I mean, if you've seen it in a VHS tape, DVD, Blu-ray, or if you're a fan of horror, if you've seen like photos of the book or the production. Yeah, let me know what you think. And if you like this video, give a like to the video. And if you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe, hit the bell, because we're aiming our goal to get 1 million subscribers before the end of this year. So let's do this. And hey, it's still spooky season, so let's keep going, shall we? Until then, have a great day, everybody. See ya. Stay safe. Stay spooky. Whee!